The Mound is recently released and is one of my all-time favorite extraction games already. However, the game can be especially brutal if you don't know what you're doing. This guide covers the basics and more advanced topics, including the locations of important items to continue your journey in the Mound. The video will be split up into different topics, so feel free to skip around. Booting up the game, you're introduced to two options: cinematic camera or normal camera. This is up to pure preference, but I would recommend the normal camera, especially if you get easily motion sick. The Mound lets you play up to 3 people to a maximum of 4, however it is completely viable to play this game solo. Whenever you start your own game or join another player's game, the game will let you choose between some different characters. Now this is up to pure preference, as these are just skins and offer no unique benefits. Now let's talk about your home base, the Galleon. Heading over to the map, you can see different types of missions you can choose from. However, some have special mandatory requirements you can see at the top of the page. You can see what equipment you'll start with by looking at the little box icon in the middle of the page. Your first mission will always be a basic run. Once you complete a basic mission, you can advance to the next stage of that mission, mid, and then advanced. The mission essentially behaves the same, however difficulty increases with more enemies and more aggression, and a larger requirement in succeeding the mission. For example, your basic mission might ask you to get 950, however in the more advanced missions it might ask for 1,500 or up to 2,000. After you sign off on your mission, go ahead and interact with the map right beside it. This will show you every map you have unlocked. You unlock more maps by gathering logbooks, and these are found on the maps, usually at the very back of the map. After you're done choosing your mission, make sure to pick up everything the game gives to you and drop them off in the cart. Many players don't know that you actually can drop off items in the cart before the mission even starts. By doing this, you allow yourself to have more of a cushion fall if you need more supplies once you actually get into the mission. The equipment you pick up can be upgraded at the anvil. The anvil lets you increase durability and damage mostly, or lets you trade out different items. The way you upgrade items at the anvil is through tokens. You unlock tokens by doing missions and coming back safely. You do not get to keep items between runs, so every run is a fresh new experience, so make sure to keep up on tokens if you want to have the best experience. Now there is also a shop you can buy items from. The usefulness of these items vary. The medallion lets you scout out further treasure. The jar of black ichor lets you disrupt large groups of enemies. The crucifix lets you stun smaller enemies. The map leads the way and can show important items like the logbook, usually in a red circle. Now the map is very helpful, but if you do want to watch my segment of the guide, I will cover where the important saints are and the logbooks. I'll get into what saints are in a bit, but the logbooks are especially important because they can unlock more parts of the map. If I were to rank the usefulness of each item, I'll put the jar of black ichor at 1, and then the map at 2nd, and then the crucifix at 3rd, the medallion at 4th, and the torch at 5th. Although the torch can be very helpful depending on how dark your game is or if you're having lots of trouble with respawning enemies. The way you use the torch is that you throw it at enemies that are sinking into the ground after you kill them. That prevents them from respawning. Now saints are something else that I mentioned. These function a lot like logbooks. Saints are items you can bring back to your ship, and after you bring them back, you unlock a permanent buff. Some of these vary from being able to always use your gun during the rain, and the most powerful one in my opinion is Saint Benedict, who allows you to have an instant revive one time per mission. So for example, if my HP goes down to 0, I won't die and I'll be forgiven just once. You're only allowed one saint at a time, and it costs 50 tokens to equip. And one last thing to keep in mind before you start an actual game, make sure that the map you're going on is not raining if you're using a gun. You can find out if the map is raining by hovering over it on the map table. You want to do this because most guns in this game do not work in damp environments or the rain. The only exception to that rule is an upgraded flintlock. Now let's talk about what you should keep in mind in a real game. Firstly, try to avoid making loud noises. Loud noises are not your friend. It decreases the time it takes for the forest to awaken and a blood moon to spawn. Things that make loud noise include voice chat, running in armor, breaking branches, gunshots, enemy screams, and much more. Most missions derive from a main monetary goal. For example, this mission asks for gold, with the bonus objective of finding the logbook. Gold is primarily earned by finding totems and trinkets around the map. Once you find a totem, go ahead and drop it off in your cart to free up inventory space. Pressing tab lets you see how much gold you've accumulated, how much time is left in the mission, and each player's total gold amount in their inventory. Now each game has a time limit. It's generally best if you stay in the time limit, as if you go over the time limit, there'll be way more enemies and much more aggressive behavior from those enemies. Due to this time limit, you may think that splitting up is the best idea. One person gets an artifact, another gets an artifact, you could both meet at the cart. Now this is actually not recommended. Apart from the obvious downside of having only one person to help you deal with enemies, another issue is the hidden isolation stat. Now what that isolation stat actually does is basically the source of your hallucinations. The more time you spend away from your teammates and away from the cart, the more your isolation increases. This makes some weird, wacky things happen. For example, your teammates could look like enemies, even look like trees. You can have very annoying visual effects on your screen, so it's recommended to avoid this as much as possible. And once you reach a very high amount of isolation, you do have a chance to teleport randomly across the map. This can be absolutely detrimental to your runs and can be game ending. Now, how you reduce isolation, or at least increase the time before you do go insane, is sticking close to the cart, to your friends, and eating the glowing mushrooms around the map. These mushrooms can often be found in caves and sometimes randomly near the outskirts of waterfalls. Now that we've gone over the basics, let's talk about how you can generally deal with most enemies in this game. A recommended course of action to almost every normal enemy in this game is to sneak up behind them with a melee weapon and insta-kill them. This makes no noise and is very efficient. It's even easier when you have two people. Just have one of your friends, or even your AI companion if you're playing by yourself, distract the enemy and sneak up behind them, then kill them. Now let's go over some of the more annoying enemy types. The main two I'm going to talk about are the bird and the spider woodland thing. Now the bird dramatically increases your hallucinations. It basically spams VFX over your screen, makes it super foggy, really disorientating. And the way you deal with these birds is by shooting them. You can usually find them perched above bridges or anything that's above your usual line of sight. Killing these birds completely avoids this issue, but it does make a very loud scream, so it's up to you if you think it's worth it or not. Now the real most annoying enemy in this game is the spider. Spider is sort of like a woodland spider hybrid thing. You'll be able to recognize it once it spawns in, and it does spawn in quite frequently. This thing targets you and leaves you at half HP now. Before the last patch, this thing used to do almost all of your HP, leaving you with a sliver of health. But don't get it twisted, this thing is still annoying. The main thing this does is knock you down and have a forceful CC. You can kill it, but what I found most effective is crossbow bolts and gunshots. Melee weapons do not work on it, and arrows take a long time to kill it, in my experience. Another thing I noticed, after this spider CCs you, it seems like the chance of your character having an imposter dramatically increases. So an imposter is an enemy that spawns in that looks like you or one of your teammates, and it can be annoying, but they're not too bad to deal with. Another enemy to look out for is the teleport enemy. This thing kind of spawns on you and teleports you to another side of the map. It's a sort of human-like appearance with kind of like a portal underneath it. I've only gotten it to spawn one time, and unfortunately I don't have any footage of what it looks like. Another enemy you may run into is the deep one. This is a fish-human hybrid. They have medium HP, you cannot backstab them, They do decent damage, but the main thing you want to look out for is their puke attack, which can majorly slow you down. Another enemy to look out for is the armored zombie. These things tend to spawn in pairs, so they can be very tedious to deal with. They often take up to 4 or 5 shots. If what you want to do against these guys is aim for the legs or any unprotected parts on their body. Now the dog is an enemy that tends to spawn pretty frequently once you get into the later missions, however they're not that bad to deal with. They have a tentacle ton attack, but it doesn't do too much damage. Just make sure you run it down before it could do any major damage. Now one of the most deadly enemies is the bat. This thing spawns whenever the match is close to ending. I say during blood moons, during overtime, this is when this spawns the most frequently. Basically all this enemy does is follow you around, and I say you have about 4 to 5 seconds before it instantly kills you. Melee weapons instantly break if you hit it, and the only effective course of action against these enemies is crossbow bolts and gunshots. However, I would recommend at least one other teammate shooting this thing with you, as it does have a decent amount of HP. Now let's move on to what I'm going to simply call the tank. This thing has so much HP and is physically unkillable. Whenever you kill it, quote unquote, it just goes down to the floor and you have about a 7-second grace period before it gets back up. The tank does major damage. Using a crossbow as its main form of weapon, this thing can chunk off parts of your HP and make you bleed. The recommended course of action is to just run past these guys. Now the last enemy we're going to talk about is the centipede. The way you encounter the centipede is unique to every other enemy. First, you need to be infected. You either be infected by random mimics or sometimes enemies like deer harboring these infections run towards you, and just general hazards around the map can infect you. Now the way you deal with these infections is by eating berries. However, if you cannot get the infection off of you in 1 minute, a centipede will puke out of your mouth and then it will continue to spawn in. Now these don't do that much damage and they're not that deadly, but they can be annoying. They tend to stun you a little bit, and really what they do is make the other enemies more lethal against you. Now that we know the enemies, let's figure out what weapons we should use against them. At the last spot, I'm going to have to put the flintlock and muskets here. They're very fun to use, but they make way too much noise, unfortunately. Including the fact that they don't work in wet and damp environments really puts it down the list. Next up, I'm going to put melee weapons. Things like the machete, the rapier. Now these are great for backstabs, but I wouldn't exactly call that true combat. Next up, I'm going to put the bow. The bow is very good at almost everything it does. It's quiet, it's efficient, it does decent damage, but I think our next two contenders are slightly above it. Now the crossbow and the Francesca axe are about equally matched for me. I would prefer using the crossbow because it is more consistent, it has longer range and more damage. However, the Francesca axe is a great choice as it acts as a melee weapon with some of the highest durability if upgraded. And it does really decent damage if you throw it. Just one other side note, make sure to use the scroll wheel whenever you need to. I know that it makes a loud noise, but it's better than wandering aimlessly for minutes on end. On PC, hold down G and you'll have access to either call the cart, whistle for your teammates, or do 2 emotes. One other thing I really appreciate if any of you were to like and subscribe, as this is my first ever YouTube video. Now whenever you successfully complete your first mission, you will be granted this screen. This will show you how well you did, and depending on how well you did, you'll earn more tokens. But the real important thing here is your level. The more levels you get, the more inventory slots you get, the more reskins for the knife you could get, and some other cool bonuses. But the main thing really is the extra inventory spaces, as they will save you, especially in the early game. Alright, now I'm going to show you guys where to find the most powerful saint statue. Now remember, this lets you revive once a day, and it's incredibly powerful. So to get Saint Benedict, you're going to want to select Wreck of the Lazaro East on your map. Once you land, just make sure to get out of the fort and then just keep following the main road for a while. And then you're going to run into these two waterfalls. Make sure to pick the one on the left. And just follow the main road until you reach a bridge segment. Now a lot of the times a bird will spawn here, so just look out for that. Alright, I had to cut out a little bit of footage, just mostly combat, nothing too interesting. Now once you get to the bridge with the bird, make sure to take another left and not a right. And then you're going to reach this little cave entrance. Make sure not to go to the left and go to the right. Keep going down to the right. And then you're going to see this little cave opening down here. Now just follow this to the end. And you're gonna find the actual shipwreck. And take a right, and go all the way up, and then you'll find Saint Benedict. Now just make sure to get him back to your cart, and remember, you can only equip him after your mission is over and at the cart for 50 tokens. Once you complete more missions, more unique enemies will start to spawn, and you might even see this mission here, the portal. I'm going to walk you through this mission and how to actually complete it. For this mission, there will not be a cart, and your only objective is to throw an ornate lantern into the ritual. Once you spawn in, make sure to grab the lantern. Now this will function like a logbook, so you can't use any firearms or any weapons while you have it equipped. Another quirk about this mission is to not wake up the forest, so do not make any loud noises or else there will be a huge penalty, and even if you stay in the match for too long, you will be hunted down by an entity. Now you're going to see a lot of purple stuff on the floor. Make sure not to stay in this for that long or else it will immediately kill you. I'd say you have about a 7 to 10 second grace period before this thing kills you. Another thing the purple thing does is generally give you clues as to where your mission objective is if you don't know where you're supposed to go. Now as a general rule of thumb for these missions, your objective always spawns where the fort spawns. So in other words, your objective will always be where the logbook spawns. So if you know the map's logbook spawn location, you already know where to go, which is a huge benefit. Now I did this run solo just to prove that you can do it by yourself. However, of course these missions will be easier with other players. Now once you find your actual objective, all you need to do is throw in the sensor into the pit, and then you're done. That's the whole mission. Just head back and you'll be good. Once you actually reach the mound, you may be confused as to why you can't use the portal. Now I won't have any footage here just in case you didn't mean to see this part, but basically whenever you reach the mound, you'll enter this room with a portal that you cannot access, and you'll see these totems on the left side of the room. Now these totems are the way you can unlock the portal. However, you can't unlock these totems in the actual mission. You'll need to go back to your ship with the logbook. Now once you head back, you're going to notice you unlocked a new type of mission, legendary missions. These missions will ask you to go find a special artifact, and upon completing these missions, one of these totems will light up. You'll need to light every totem to access the portal. Now that's going to be everything that this guide covers. I want to thank you guys again for watching this whole video. Even if you just watched parts of it, I really do appreciate it. Like I said, this is my first YouTube video, so even if I get like 10 likes or 5 likes, that really means a lot. Thank you.